Hey guys, this is Alex. I'm just going to run through really quickly how the end of the season tiebreakers work, and then I'm going to talk about each team's possible keeps. So this will be a little bit longer than some of the other videos that we went through so far, but remember in week 14 you're going to declare your contract for next year, and that player is a player that you can keep for the next 2 years in that slot where you contract them. Um, so first thing to look at is at the end of the season, obviously the teams with the best records are going to be the teams that make the playoffs. The two division leaders, currently Special Teams Hunger Forest and Jones in for a win, those two, whatever those two teams end up to be, those will be the teams that get the bye. And then there will be four more teams that will go into the playoffs based on record. And so the better your record is, obviously the better chance you have of getting in. If you have the same record as someone else, which looks like we're going to have at least a couple of those probably, at the end of the season, if you end up with the same record as somebody else, what you're going to have to do is go to your breakers, and your breakers are going to be your points for plus your points against. And so you'll add those two totals together, and whoever has more, they'll be the one that has the tiebreaker on the other team. So pretty simple there. Now we're going to run into, and we're going to take a look at each of the team's possible keeps. We're going to do that by looking at a draft recap. And so we will take a look by team. We'll start with my team. So I can keep any of these players, and so every year we get to sign a player to a contract. It's random whether you're allowed to re-sign players from an old contract. This year we're allowed to. It's random how many years you're allowed to sign them, but it has a range, and this year it's 2 years. So what this means is whatever player I sign, I can keep wherever I drafted them next year and the following year if I want. Okay? So I could keep Hopkins here at 1, Fournette at 2, carry on. Chris Godwin at 4. That one looks pretty good. We got Tevin Coleman, Hunter Henry, Westbrook, Tucker. So I have Mahomes at the end, and he's actually someone that I re-signed from before. So I can keep him at 15 or Chris Godwin at 4, and almost certainly I'll be keeping one of those two, either Godwin at 4 or Patrick Mahomes at 15. Let's move on to Grand Sam. So he's got some options up here. He's got T.Y. Hilton at 4. I guess that's a possibility. He's got Nick Chubb at 12. That's who he kept from before, and he can re-sign Chubb for 2 years if he wants at 12. It seems pretty good. I also know he's a Chiefs fan. Maybe he'll sign Harrison Butker at 13 for a couple years. Probably not. So I'm going to suspect he's probably going to go with Chubb, but he might sign somebody else to a 2-year deal. But whoever he signs, he'll sign him for 2 years so he can keep him in that same slot for next year and the following if he wants. So here we've got a guy on a Buffalo. Could keep Kamara in the first or Cook in the second. Cook in the second looks pretty good since he's been one of the best running backs. Ingram in the fourth, too, looks pretty good. Lamar Jackson in the 12th he could keep if he wanted to keep a QB. And before we go on to the next one, I just want to remind everybody, there are a couple stipulations as to whether or not you can keep a player. You must have drafted the player, and that's why I'm going through each team at one at a time and saying who they could keep. You must have the player on your team in Week 14 when we declare our keeps. And at the end of the season, you must still have the player on your team. As long as you meet those 3 criteria, then you'll be allowed to keep them for next year. And what will happen is next year, when it gets close to draft time, I'll ask you if you're keeping them or not. You can decide to not keep them at that time. You can decide to basically void their contract at that time. But if you don't void their contract, they'll take up the slot that they were in where you signed them to a contract. So, for example, if Holmes decides to keep Mark Ingram for a 4th rounder, next season he'll be his 4th round pick, and the following season he'll be his 4th round pick too. Either of those seasons, at the beginning of the season, he could decide he doesn't want to do it anymore, and if he doesn't, the contract will just go away. So let's take a look at the Special Teams Hunger Force, team that's doing really well in this league. We've got David Johnson, Mike Evans, Thielen, Henry, Melvin Gordon at 8. Maybe that's a reasonable keep. Russell Wilson at 10 could be a reasonable keep since he's looked like the best QB. So perhaps one of those. Money Thinker's got Barkley at 1. He could keep Elliott at 2. I think that's who he kept last year. He's got Zach Ertz there at 3. Cam Newton at 10. Cortland Sutton at 11, maybe 11, or Christian Kirk at 9. He's got some interesting wide receivers down there. He's got A.J. Green at 7. That could be a player he could consider keeping. But remember, he's got to decide that in 3 weeks, so he'll have to decide it fairly soon, so I'm not sure what he'll do. Jones and Verwin, this is Justin's team. He's got Julio he's been keeping for a few years here, and he's got Deshaun Watson at 5 now. Maybe he'll audible to Deshaun Watson perhaps. Curtis Samuel, Marcus Valdez, some okay guys there. Damian Harris. All right, so we'll have to see what he's going to go with. I suspect he'll just keep on keeping Julio. Let's take a look at Papa Giorgio. He could keep Michael Thomas. Michael Thomas has been a spectacular wide receiver. Carson at 4 looks reasonable as well. Eckler at 7, that could be a good keep, especially if the Chargers do not re-sign Melvin Gordon, which I'm not sure if they're going to. All right, and that's about the extent there probably on those. Might keep the Patriots defense at 11 perhaps, never know. So we'll take a look at Juju Junior Varsity. He's got Le'Veon Bell at 1, Odell Beckham at 2, Amari Cooper at 3, so maybe Amari Cooper. Juju at 6, he could also keep Juju at 6, that's pretty reasonable. Michael Gallup at 14 he could keep as well. McCaffrey at 1, and that's you are allowed to just keep McCaffrey at 1. I suspect that might be a thing that happens, so we'll just keep McCaffrey at 1, and then that'll be his first round pick next season. We don't know where we're drafting when you decide to make this choice, but you will know where you're drafting before you decide if you want to keep them actually next year. But when you choose which player you're going to keep, you won't know where you're drafting yet. He's got Antonio Brown for a 3, pretty speculative. You could keep him, just kidding. I mean, he can keep him if he wants, but it sounds like a horrible plan. We got Josh Jacobs at 5. Emmanuel Sanders at 11. Metcalf at 15. He's got some interesting choices. I might just keep McCaffrey at 1 because he's just such a difference maker, especially if you end up going like 6th or 7th and you get to have McCaffrey. That'd be pretty powerful. But you could also go for a later player like Jacobs would be a solid keep, or a super deep player like Metcalf where you just don't spend a pick at all and you get a good player. All right. To clarify that, you actually do spend a pick, but it's the 15th pick, so it's, anything after about the 10th round is, is not going to affect your draft very much, and you're going to be able to, kind of act as though you didn't spend a pick. CJ just handed me a nasty loss this past week here, possibly knocking me out of the playoffs. Here are his possible keeps. He's got Tyreek Hill and Travis Kelce here. Aaron Jones seems reasonable there at 3. Philip Lindsay at 7. That could be a good keep as well. Josh Allen at 8. I know he likes Josh Allen. I know KD does a lot of the managing of this team. In any case, those are our different ones we can look at. And just so if you guys want to know how to get to this, if you go to the league page, you need to do it from a computer. And then you click on Draft Recap. You can look at the draft results, and you can look by round or by team. Remember, you can only sign a player to a contract that you drafted and that is on your team in Week 14. And that is still on your team at the end of the season. So you're going to tell me in Week 14 who it's going to be. I'll get in touch with everybody in the next week or so, and I'll get them to go ahead and tell me their current choice, and then you can change it all the way up until the end of Week 14. So, anyways, I guess the beginning of Week 14, actually, I guess kind of like Sunday. On Sunday on Week 14, I'm going to make people lock in their choices, but probably around Week 13, I'll get a choice from each person. So, like, for example, if I was contacting myself, I'd be like, hey, Simple Ricks, let me look. And I'd be like, all right, I'm going to go ahead and say I'm going to keep Godwin right now. And then if a week went by and I didn't say anything to the commissioner me, then commissioner me would just lock that in as my keep. Or I might contact him and be like, oh, I think I'm actually just going to keep Mahomes instead. I think I'd rather just keep somebody really late. Something like that. Anyways, I'm looking forward to next year since I look to be eliminated probably at this stage because I did lose this week despite posting probably the second most points. Yeah. Oh, third most points. Papa Giorgio edged me out there. So, third most points. Lost this week. Oh, what? Wait a second. Oh, yeah, there's a game tomorrow night. That's why. Okay. So did lose, and we'll be getting the third most points. So, second most points, rather. Anyways, too strong. You guys are too good in this league. I never can seem to win it. This is the only league I run that I've run for more than a year that I've never been able to win. And so, yeah, I will keep trying to win it. Here's the Rascal, though, living the dream with, I think she's going to 10-1, if I'm not mistaken. Oh, actually, let's take a look at their matchup. Likely to go to 10-1, unless Keenan Allen blows up Watkins and Gordon. She's already a smidge ahead, too. Yeah, pretty big favorite, I would say. But it could happen. Alrighty. Any case, Good luck in the rest of the season, guys. And if you already know if you want to go ahead and throw a keeper at me, a contract player that you were like, hey, this is probably going to be who I'm going to put on contract, you can go ahead and contact me. Just text me or send me a GroupMe private message and let me know who that player is. Thanks, and I'll probably do another one of these videos when just as the playoffs are about to begin.